to CEC Gurukul lecture. In the continuation to the series on sociology of work, today I am going to talk about classical approach to work, where I'll be discussing about Emile Durkheim. Emile Durkheim, as one of the classical sociologists, founding father of sociology, did not directly contribute as such talk about work or sociology of work, but some of the concepts, some of the ways in which he tried to understand the nature of industrial society helps us to understand how we look into workplace relations in contemporary society. His theory, where we start off with a kind of a functional perspective. So Durkheim was basically a functionalist. He tried to understand society from the perspective of positive approach, and he belongs to the positive school of thought. So unlike Karl Marx, which I discussed in the previous lecture, Marx talks about conflict, Marx talks about inequality, talks about difference, and tries to give us the concept of alienation, whereas Emile Durkheim will talk about moral order, he will talk about solidarity, and he kind of arrives at an approach which gives us a very positive way to look at social reality, to understand how we look at workplace as a kind of a social fact, as a place where integration and solidarity is possible. In his theory of evolution, trying to understand the changes that was happening in society, mainly the Western society, where large-scale industrialization was taking place, there was a shift from collectivity to individualism. There was a decline in community feeling. There was a decline in kind of people working together. So people were moving to industries, people were migrating from rural areas to urban areas, and therefore he provides a comparative understanding to look into the concept of solidarity as what was the nature in pre-industrial, small-scale rural society, and how that nature of solidarity has changed with the coming of industrial, complex, large-scale society, heterogeneous population, workplace where people from different community, different religion are working together. So that is his contribution, and therefore he kind of like alienation, which is a term given by Karl Marx, Durkheim talks about anomie. He talks about normlessness. He talks about how there is a kind of anomic division of labor, where the integration of an individual to the society has kind of declined. So looking at the entire way in which he has understood social change or shift from one form of solidarity to the other helps us understand the approach to work. So to begin with, we kind of look into how his theory is placed within the classical theories, and as I already said, he belonged to the initial contributors. Rather, when we read about sociology, we are kind of told that Marx, Durkheim and Weber are kind of belongs to a gang. They are all considered as founding figures, writing at the same point and helping in kind of institutionalization of sociology as a discipline. So the time when he was kind of writing the context, he was kind of disturbed by the large-scale transformations which were taking place, and because of kind of a shift towards modernity, rationalization of knowledge, the growth of science and technology, and large-scale movement of population from rural agrarian base to industrial setups and cities. So this is where he tries to look into the division of labor. Now, division of labor, if we go into the economics theory, would be more in terms of looking at the ways in which individuals are divided for a particular work, and it was mostly kind of considered as an economic process. Durkheim brings in the division of labor as a social fact. He looks into it as something, as a process that kind of helps us understand the solidarity, helps us understand how individuals are integrated in society, and therefore his work, which is the division of labor in society, becomes one of the classical texts in sociology. In this work, he discusses how division of labor is kind of not only leads to separation of work, because everybody in an industrial setup needs to have a separate work according to the skill. So there is separation and there is specialization. Now this separation does not mean that the workers are independent of each other. The separate work means the work has been broken down into smaller components and each one is doing their part for the production of the whole. So therefore there is a relation of interdependence, and this interdependence kind of benefits society because it increases the reproductive capacity of a process and the skill sets of workers. So and that could be one of the kind of understanding of industrial society. So the industrial society was a society where the emphasis was on efficiency. So more and more efficient production was the target. And with efficiency, there was also kind of focus on skill based. So this division of labor therefore become functional in terms of kind of contributing to efficiency and specialization. Now, when we look into how he kind of conceptualized society, we need to keep in mind that Durkheim as a functionalist was also kind of looking from a collective perspective. So society was kind of very central to him, and therefore when he looks into solidarity or the relation between individual and the society, he kind of considers social solidarity as leading to stability, as something which could lead to kind of building the relation between individual and the society, and it kind of not be considered as something which was taken for granted, not something which was kind of in the system or natural, but it was something which people had developed due to the work, the nature of work that they were doing. So when we look into the functions of solidarity in his next book, which is The Rules of Sociological Method, again a classical text and a must read for all students of sociology, he tells us how we need to look at the parts or process in society from a positive perspective. So if something like crime, which is generally seen from a commonsensical perspective seen as abnormal, as something which is deviating from the norms, Durkheim kind of considered it as normal. And because if it is accepted, or if the practice is kind of average, most of the people are indulging in it, then it becomes normal. So his understanding of normal and pathological was also coming in from the way in which the activity was being performed in society. So he was kind of concerned in terms of understanding the genesis of the phenomena. From where was it originating? How was it originating? So even when we look into his understanding of suicide, he kind of not only limits it to as a psychological condition, but he tries to trace the origin of suicide in the society. So the society was his focus of understanding, from looking into the way in which people were held together, the way the people were related to the society helped to understand the nature or the structures of society. So he was primarily interested in kind of understanding what holds society together, from where is this solidarity emerging, and how is it that people are doing different work, yet they are interdependent on each other, and though they are kind of segregated and separated, yet the whole is functional, or is the product is being constructed. So when we look into his approach to sociology of work, it's very important to let us focus his understanding on industrial society. Though Durkheim as a functionalist has given us the theory of religion as well, where he looks into the Australian aborigine and tries to give us how religion functions to maintain the collective consciousness. And in his work on elementary forms of religious life, Durkheim tells us that society is God. And so the whole idea, if we look into his methodological vantage point, he is kind of focusing on collectivity. He is trying to kind of find a solution to the changes, social change that was taking place, and he wanted to kind of suggest a way to come back to that collectivity. So but then we'll not try to look into his understanding of religion. He's also contributed to the rules of sociological method, where he talks about about social method, fact, characteristics of social fact, and his other works is also on suicide and division of labor. So, in this lecture, I will focus on trying to understand his work, The Division of Labor, in which he discusses about solidarity and about anomie. Anomie becomes very important, where we see how people have become meaningless, life has become meaningless, there is no norm, and people are kind of getting detached from society. The sense of belonging has kind of declined, and it is from these sense of meaninglessness, normlessness, that we have started facing a lot of mental health issues, and the number of depression or suicidal cases has kind of increased. So, what Durkheim was suggesting or talking in his work becomes relevant when we look into contemporary society. So, this book, The Division of Labor in Society, was his doctoral thesis, which was written when sociology as a discipline hardly existed in France. So, he was trying to understand, as I already said, the nature of social change which was taking place, the large great transformation that can be talked about, and he wanted to kind of understand how division of labor could help to understand the social solidarity. Again, at a time when there was a large scale economic social changes, now his theory could be kind of placed in the evolutionary perspective, where there were a lot of work which was trying to look into social change from an evolutionary perspective, and there were many contributors from the Western society who were trying to suggest that as society is evolving, there is a shift from, say, simple society to a complex society, from an agrarian society to industrial society, from small scale to complex society. So, these understanding was that with the evolution of a complex industrial society, integration had declined, the solidarity had kind of disappeared. So, he wanted to prove them wrong, and he wanted to say that with urbanization, there is an increased division of labor, and this increased division of labor has kind of changed the form of solidarity. It has not declined or it has not kind of disappeared, but division of labor has transformed, and with this change in division of labor, the nature of solidarity has evolved. So, if he kind of gives a critical review of the theories which were looking at the idea of disintegration, the fall of society, and there he kind of looks into the theory of Taunis, who claimed that modern society was disintegrating under the transition to industrial life. So, the argument made by this evolutionary theory was that there was too much of focus on market, on economy, and therefore social life was being kind of affected, and these concepts became very important in sociological theory. Terms like Gemeinschaft, which was a term for community. Now, the community where people were kind of working together, it was a home-based subsistence production, was changing to Gesellschaft, and Gesellschaft meant societal. Societal in the sense that people were kind of more individual oriented, their own interests were more important, and the society's interest was kind of less. So, this again, the shift from Gemeinschaft to Gesellschaft suggests that society was disintegrating. Durkheim argued that rather than solidarity being dismantled, it was being reconstructed to a different form. So, this is reinstating what was said, that the nature of solidarity has changed, it is not that it has kind of disintegrated. The next thinker was Simmel. Similarly, like Taunis, he gives us a theory which suggests modern form of life giving way to private world. So, this whole entire kind of dichotomies between the, say, public and private became very significant. So, the communal feeling became restricted in public, and public was kind of more for economic affair, and private was for social life. So, there was a kind of a clear-cut dichotomous relation which was being established. Durkheim argued against Simmel and suggests that modern industrial society, people actively participate. They are freed from isolation by inducing mutual dependence through increased division of labor. So this entire world of work where people are from multiple or different region community are working together, and yet they are dependent on each other. So they kind of creates a different world altogether where people have social relations, where people are related to each other. The third is Spencer, who is gives us again a evolutionary positive approach to social change, and he kind of says that a free reign of egoism and laissez-faire propagated by means of natural selection. So he gives us the theory of the fittest, of the survival of the fittest, and this kind of moved from say people thinking about community to being very self-centered. So if as an individual one had the community capacity to trade or had the power to trade, then the individual could progress irrespective of whether their community was doing or not. Durkheim partially accepted Spencer's theory and argued the theory failed to recognize the critical significance of social nature of so everything is not economic. This kind of lot of how individual perform in the economic relation is also dependent on their social nature, on a lot more others. So there is a kind of embeddedness of economy which needs to be kept in mind. And it, as I already said, Durkheim was more concerned with collective solidarity and morality. For him, moral order was of significance, and this moral order, that the sense of belongingness was kind of very important to kind of allow people to survive in society by being interdependent and related to each other. So the moral order that we are talking about, he kind says that it can be achieved through individual morality. However, Durkheim acknowledged the decline of moral order due to social change. So the moral order is dependent on an individual. So how much you kind of accept morality, or you want to go away out from the collective and do your individual, but then because of the influence of market, because of the profit motive coming in with the desire to kind of do better than the other, there is a decline of the moral order. And when the moral order in the society declines or becomes low, then there is normlessness, and this normlessness he describes as anomie. So anomie is a situation where the morality is disintegrated. So people are not concerned about the moral order. They are kind of give less importance to how the individual action would affect the behavior of other. So it kind of becomes selfishness. There is a lot of difference. There are people that ignore pluralism. They are more concerned about their own profit, about their own self progress, and it is there here when there is a way to anomic relation. So pre-industrial society was kind of, for Durkheim, he does a comparative study of what was the nature of moral order in pre-industrial society and what was the nature in a industrial society, and on the basis of his comparison he kind of arrives that it was more uniform. People were more collectively conscious. So since even because the economy and the social life was not separate, so they were taking part in the say home based production, people were working together, and therefore the sense of belonging was higher. So as we move to say the industrial society, the division of labor becomes more complex, and with this division of labor where it is not only a family based, the market comes in to decide who are going to be the skilled workers. People from different family, different community are working together, and therefore this complex heterogeneous nature of division of labor give rise to a different set of interdependence and integration. So he determines what is the basis of solidarity is kind of changing over time. So as Karl Marx says that the means of production will determine the course of history, Durkheim was kind of concerned about the collective consciousness, that is the sense of belonging, the sense of being a member of a society. So that change in that, this change in solidarity or change in the way society was integrated would bring about change in society. So he used the concept of social solidarity to show how society kind of holds people, how people are integrated to each other. Now, what was the cause for the change in division of labor? Because so the labor process also undergoes change. Earlier, production was for smaller purpose, it was more for subsistence. Now, the market comes in and production is for profit. So, there is an increase in production. With increase in production, the economy asset changes, and therefore, the population increases. So, higher kind of space, more complex division of labor is required. So, division of labor, as I already said, is separation and specialization of work among people. And he was kind of said that separation means people are doing different component of the work, and specialization means to do each component of work you need a specific set of skills. So, division of labor was separation and specialization. Separation itself, when people had to do particular work, would lead to specialization. Now, when he looks into division of labor and solidarity, he kind of tells us that division of labor is kind of leads to is constitutive of division of labor, that producers must be specialized in specific tasks in any activity. And for Durkheim, being a functionalist, he is very categorically stating that division of labor does not lead to conflict, it leads to harmony, it leads to integration. Each individual will be doing their work in the most skilled manner, so there will be a kind of harmony. Now, when he talks about the solidarity, the most important contribution is that he talks about two types of solidarity: mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity. Mechanical solidarity is found in simple society, pre-industrial society, where each of the only division of labor which was there was based on age and gender, else there was no kind of division of labor, and there was a level of likeliness. People were aware of each other, same values, common tasks, common life situations and experience. Now, in this when he talks about mechanical solidarity, if there was a crime or there was something which went against the society, the law was repressive. Repressive in the sense that entire society was responsible for that crime, and punishment was for to repress that. So, everybody was necessary to ensure that no crime was done, because the punishment would be for the entire community, and this crime would affect the solidarity. When we go to organic solidarity, is found in complex industrial society, and the collective consciousness begins to decline. So, as division of labor becomes more complex, the collective consciousness begins to decline, and a new form of solidarity which Durkheim calls as organic solidarity. Now, organic solidarity, people are dependent on each other and there is a functional interdependence. So, for the end product to be produced, all the people who are involved in that production process are dependent on each other. So, there is difference, but the difference is not kind of based on inequality. The difference is recognized for functional purpose, and it kind of leads to a new kind of solidarity. Now, when we have organic solidarity, the law is restitutive or restorative. Restitutive means we want to bring back the society back to the normal stage. So, the punishment is to kind of restore. So, if you look into the judgment or the way in which criminal offences are handled, it is kind of to bring back. So, from this simple diagram, we will be able to understand the concept that Durkheim gives, and we see that mechanical is in simple pre-industrial society, it is repressive law. Organic solidarity is industrial society, restitutive and restorative. So, the entire idea of organic solidarity was to understand the nature of industrial society, which was becoming more complex, heterogeneous, yet the level of integration was coming in from the economic sphere. So, his work becomes very significant, the workspace becomes very significant to retain integrated society, to retain that despite the fact of decline in collective consciousness, there was integration and society was kind of having nature of solidarity. So, with this understanding of division of labor and the transition from mechanical solidarity to organic solidarity, we understand Durkheim's contribution to sociology of work. With this, I come to an end of today's lecture. Thank you.